So the first area that I want to look at is the value mapping enhancements. We've made a lot of changes in this area with like the multi-field mapping and the multivariate mapping, and some of that has uncovered some challenges with value mapping that we addressed in 3.7. Um, so what have we done here? We've added new validation to avoid known failure cases, and I'll dive into detail on that. We added a toggle to allow standard value mapping to turn off standard value mapping when a use case only needs advanced value mapping. Previously, this had to be deleted every time you opened the automation, or it could introduce a bad mapping row. But now that can just be toggled on and off, like we do with the advanced value mapping. Kind of excitingly, we added a new advanced value mapping operator for value like, which does pattern matching based on a regex statement. So this lets you put in some pretty powerful filtering on your value mapping that previously would have needed to be done through a business script. This can now just be written as a regex statement in the value mapping. And finally, we implemented lazy loading for the value pickers. This isn't going to have any end experience change, except potentially a slight delay when you open the value mapping if the number of value options is huge. We did this because there was a potential out-of-memory error where the UI was instantiating an object for every option for every row of the value mapping picker. And so now we're lazy loading those. So the only place where you would really see that delay is if they're like your, say, mapping rally sprints for your entire workspace, and there are hundreds of sprints across all of the projects. That's where you may see a slight delay in opening that. But hopefully with the regex mapping, you won't need to do that anymore. But we did address that error. So let's look at these features, and then I'll do the demo. So the toggle for the standard value mapping works exactly the same way that the advanced value mapping toggle does. By default, this toggle is on, so you get your standard value mapping row, and you can remove the check mark to remove those rows. So for example, here we have a use case where we just want the two advanced mapping rows. We don't want to do anything with standard mapping, and so we can just turn it off. It was an easy solution to a problem that had a kind of complex workaround of like putting a single value in there. So this just makes it easier to configure some of these advanced use cases. Um, for the validation rules, these are rules that have in-context tips to prevent bad patterns. So for example, we know that if you use the same value as a source more than once, ConnectALL doesn't know what to do with it. In some cases, it'll just pick the first. In some cases, it was causing a silent error and just not continuing with the automation. And so now we catch this. If you try to have a single value as the source more than one time, you'll get this message that's saying the identical source exists. This works for multivariate mapping as well, looking at a combination of source fields. And so if you have exactly the same combination in multiple rows on the source side, you'll get this error. We also no longer allow blank cells in any column. We had some validation against blank cells, but it was only in the leftmost column or the leftmost cell of the row. And so if you had a blank row in the destination, or there were cases where you could clear the cell and save it with a blank value, that would then screw up the value mapping. And so now we say, no, you can't save it with a blank row. We have null values for that. Picking a blank cell doesn't do anything, and so we're not going to allow you to save it in that case. If there are multiple errors in the validation, we show the message for the first problem cell in the set. So if you had 20 rows and the same error multiple times, we would still only show the first one that's a problem. So you'd have to work through them before you could save that automation. For the advanced value mapping, we've added the operator value like, and then it gives you a place to enter your regex statement. It supports standard regex wildcard and qualifier characters, as well as a handful of regex flags. There were really two customer use cases that drove this, but we know that it is broadly applicable to a wide variety of conditional mappings. So the first one was about sprints, where at one customer they're syncing from Jira to Rally, and all of their new sprints are created with the same names in both systems, and so they sync it by value. But older sprints in Jira don't exist in Rally, and so when they tried to sync them into Rally, it would fail because Rally wouldn't know what to do with the sprint. And so they eventually put in a business script to solve this. But it is a better solution to be able to do that directly in the product. And so that's what we've done here. You can see that this is now a very simple mapping of where because their sprints all have the same prefix, they name it like the release train abbreviation, sprint, and then a number. And so we can use this regex wildcard of saying like QA sprint dot star dot in this case means any character and star means any number of the previous character. So any value that starts with QA sprint is basically what this is saying. Just send the value across. If the value is anything else, so that means in this case, if it does not match the value that you've put there, value skip. So that value else to value skip is kind of the same behavior that we had previously, but in combination with the regex statements, it lets you say if it does not match, because you can say if it matches with the value like, or if there is no match using value else. So that's how we manage these. Manage this, and I'll run through the demo of that in just a moment. Another use case is actually an internal customer. Our SE team copies the Rally 100 data for our real development teams in the ValueOps business unit so that we can have good demo data to show customers for things like flow metrics and team rollup. To be able to show live data over time, which really gives you some of those higher level Rally capabilities. But we need to obfuscate all of the personal data and product data for those stories. And so what they do is they replace all of the usernames. And they do this by pattern matching. They say if the first character, they have a user for each letter in the alphabet, and based on the first letter of the username, they replace those users. So you have something to show in the demo environment, even though it's obfuscated data. And so similar to the other use case, we can in this case use multiple value like lines that start with if the username starts with a letter, you map to a specific user, and then you can use your value else to map it to some other default user in case they've created a username that starts with a special character or any other non-alphabetic character. And so again, this is an opportunity to get rid of a business script, put this right into the value mapping, which is easier to see what's going on, easier to manage, helps with the performance of the overall synchronization. So this is another kind of cool use case for the value like operator. Um, Here's some additional information about the regex. We use the RE2 standard for regex. I will be adding a GitHub repository link to the slide to see this standard, as well as link the regex 101 site that lets you test those regex expressions. And it will basically, you can put your regex expression in there and it shows you what it is looking for in a kind of verbal format. We support the following flags. The G flag is when you want to match text elements that span more than a single line. So if you were doing something like a description field and looking for a specific string in that description field, it will continue searching even past the line breaks. Um, and then the I flag ignores case sensitivity, so that you can look for something that is ignoring the case if you're looking for a particular value. An example of this, we have a customer in Raj who uses a free text field where their teams put their team names in. And so we could do like a regex statement with the value in like a case sensitive in the case insensitive flag, so that whether or not they're capitalizing the letters of the team names, it would still get the match, is another example where that could work. Let me jump over to demo some of this. So in ConnectALL here, I'm going to switch to my demo board. And I have the automation already set up here with my value like mapping. I've done a simple automation just to show what's going on here. And so you can see the flag to enable or disable standard value mapping. So that is a nice piece to have. And I can show that if I were to pick the same thing more than once here, and then try to save that. If I try to save that, it's going to tell me that it already exists. So that's great. If I, let me delete that row, add another one. If I pick a different sprint, I should have left that blank. Pick a different sprint here and try to save this. Again, value can't be empty. I'll add another row and show you that that works in the other side as well. So the value cannot be empty. But we don't need any of that standard mapping. What you see here is the value like, and in this case, it's rtm.star, so that is anything starting with rtm, send the value across. If it's anything else, skip it. And the way that we enter that is you can pick your value like here, and it shows the operator with these backslashes, and then between the backslashes where you type in your regex statement. So ConnectALL is looking for the star value like and then the regex statement, and if that's in the advanced value mapping section, it will save it as a regex statement. And we do have some protections in, so you're not going to be able to knock the system over with a runaway regex statement or a self-referential regex statement. That's part of the standard that we implemented. So here's my sprint mapping. So you can see that if it starts with this, it should go across. Otherwise, it should skip it. And so I will go back to, or I will go over to Jira and show you that. I've got two sprints here, one that matches the pattern, and one that does not. And so let me create a new issue in each of them. And I will go run my automation. See both of them come across, and coming over to Rally, looking at my user stories. I actually have the filter on previous day. So here's those two new stories. And we can see the one that was in the good sprint has the sprint come across. The one that was in the bad sprint just sends a blank value. So there's a simple example of the value-like behavior. Any questions about any of the value mapping enhancement pieces? So is there
That
a question about the order of the regex statements? It assesses them in the order that they appear. So if you have multiple regex statements that match a value, ConnectALL will use the first one. So we check them in order.
No question. Just really excited about this. I do think this will eliminate some scripts and it really opens up some amazing possibilities and opportunities. So good job, team.
Thank you.